So good day, everybody. This is Jason Jimenez with the Bold Saviors, making the impossible possible in business. And today I have a dear friend by the name of Gadi Pollack. And Gadi has, well, you're in store for a great story and a journey of a man who has, well, quite frankly, has done a lot and experienced a lot. And because of it, he has impacted hundreds and hundreds of individuals in his life. And through that, we're going to be able to capture that today because it's noteworthy and a story that I've been wanting to tell for a long time now. And ever since I first met Gadi, I think that Gadi have been, the word for me has been just deep. And it's simply because of the fact that your methodology and process of how you work the people isn't surface level. And that's why I say deep. And it's also from a very genuine place because you've experienced things that I don't think that people would understand unless working with you. So with that being said, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Jason. That's a pleasure.
Yeah, it really warms my heart that you've accepted. And at the same time, I'd love for people to get to know about you. So for those who do not know who you are,
sure.
Who is Gadi?
Great. So what I call myself is I'm a leadership mentor. And my purpose in life is really helping great empathic leaders live great lives and find their greatness. And that journey, of course, starts in childhood. But the really significant part was October 14th, 1973, in the middle of the Yom Kippur War, where I fought as a tank gunner in that war. And it was really, in hindsight, if one would look back at if you could create the perfect laboratory that would create the most PTSD, that would be it. I knew nothing about trauma or PTSD at the time. I was a young 21-year-old tank gunner. On that day, in the middle of the Yom Kippur War, which was fought between Israel, Egypt, and Syria, was the largest tank battle in world history since the battles of Kursk in the Second World War. I was one of about 750 Israeli tanks facing about 750 Egyptian tanks. And we felt like our back was to the wall, that we were told that there was nothing between the enemy and Tel Aviv except us, and that it was do or die, and that we had to give it all. And so we did, and the battle started with a massive artillery barrage that I thought would never end. It became so intense that our tank commander, and normally our tank commanders fight with the tank hatch open so they can see outside and scan and have situational awareness and be able to direct the gunner. It was so intense that my tank commander shut the hatch and slid. I could still hear the thump of his body as it hit his seat. And immediately, like pandemonium, the pandemonium that was outside broke out inside the tank. And our loader started shouting at him to open. He said, the enemy's getting closer, we're blind. And I felt like this was it, that we were going to die, I was going to die. And I had a conversation with God at that moment, which has really run my life since then. And I'd felt that somehow I was living in imposter syndrome. And that, of all the pain, I suffered a lot. I know that it was suffering. I lost more than 25 friends killed in action. But the greatest pain, greater than all that, was the pain that God had given me the gift of life and I was wasting it somehow with imposter syndrome. And I made a vow to God at that point that were He to save me, then I would devote my life to being authentic. And the next thing I heard was the very calm voice of our battalion commander. His name was Amnon Eshkol, greatest leader I've ever met. And it came through the radio in the back. And he said simply, I want to see enemy tanks burning, in this calm voice that was like the eye in the middle of the hurricane. The calm, it was not from this world. And somehow his belief in us, the calm, motivated us. and our tank commander opened the hatch. He started directing the fire. We repelled the enemy. Later on in the course of that battle, Amnon, that very same leader, took a platoon of 3 tanks. We had sighted an enemy battalion of 30 tanks that was outflanking us. They were surrounding us, and they're about to get behind us, which would have been the end of us. And I heard Amnon call for help 3 times, and there was no help. So he was alone. And the next thing I heard him saying is, I'm taking a platoon, I'm charging that enemy force. And with 4 tanks, he smashed into that enemy force and destroyed half the tanks, and the others ran away. They turned tail and they ran away. And all 3 of the other tanks were hit because we're fighting like 10-1 odds. And he rescued everybody. He himself destroyed 7. Those 4 tanks destroyed 16 of the 30 tanks that were attacking us, and he personally destroyed 7. So he was the best leader. He was the best tank commander, the best company commander, the best platoon commander, the best battalion commander on the field that day. He was absolutely the best. And in my mind, all of it came from that sense of calm. And I made it my life mission to find out how that man stayed so calm in battle. Because I just had this sense of there was a light. I think of a near-death experience, and like the calm in the voice was the light. I had to follow that pathway, and I had to find it. And I have. No matter what it took me. It took me 10 years of healing and understanding that what I was dealing with trauma. And I recreate the greatness of that battle in every coaching session where I work with my CEOs and executives. I help them deal with problems that are overwhelming them or agitating them or upsetting them. And about 20 years ago, I became a chair with Vistage. I had this calling. I was in the insurance business, and somehow I had this higher calling. You've got to stop doing this and do something else. And I had no idea what it was. It was a pure journey of faith. And I spent a year doing what I loved doing, which I discovered that I love talking to people one-on-one. I love talking to leaders one-to-one, one-on-one, and I love facilitating meetings. And eventually, 3 people told me about this company called Vistage, which runs CEO groups. As you know, you're a former member for peer groups for CEOs and executives. And being the stubborn person I was, I turned them down twice. It sounded like a scam to me because they were like I was taking all the risk and they really weren't giving me that much. And then finally I had a friend, Don Newell, who sat me down. He said, look, Gadi, he said, your nature, your personality is you are a Vistage chair. I said, oh, thank you, really. I had no idea. He said, I was part of a group where a member died and the other members helped his wife run the business till it could be sold. I said, that's what I want. I want that level of caring and connection that people have with each other so that they will have each other's back and truly do great things. Because that was my experience in the war. We had that level of commitment for each other and we did great things. So
that was beautiful in so many ways. And correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that battle was also, there was a movie made of that battle. Of that war.
Yes, I would say it was a pivot point. It was a turning point where we went from being on defense and with no possibility of winning the war to going on offense where we could win the war, which we did.
Yeah. And so there's a sense of what comes up right now is the word fate. I was taught that faith is not just the belief in something, but it is also that it cannot be complete and whole without action. And a little bit about what you shared was that someone had to believe.
Yes.
But without the action, who would have known if any of what happened would have happened? And the story would have been different.
Absolutely.
So where do you find, on that note, and in your journey, how did you identify, or where did you identify elements of what this gentleman did as being the leader, where it influenced you in how you operate and work with individuals?
Great question. So the first thing I would say is when the war was over, my conscious intention was to forget everything.
Yeah.
And it was too horrible to live with. And so I did what a lot of people do, is say it'll never happen again. It's in the past. There's no need to think about it or talk about it. The one thing I took out of it was I have to be calm. I have to be calm.
But Gadi, I tell you, when people, first of all, I think you can agree with the statement. We all, as adults, are still living in our children's memories, even as adults, and sometimes it pops out. Very much so. And I would also state that because of those moments of trauma, good and or bad, is how we end up creating our identities, and our identities show up in our workplace.
Very much so.
So how do we separate that and realize that it's not because what I'm hearing from you, and I agree, that these moments of trauma, although horrific at times, could be viewed as a gift, because without it, we would not be who we are today.
Yes.
So how do you work with someone to acknowledge that and be willing to accept it? Because that is a pivotal shift in mindset.
Very much so. And so I was of that mindset of, I do not want to look at my past.
Yeah.
And one of the angels who came into my life was a coach named Suzanne Livingston, who worked with Vistage chairs such as myself to help us build our practice, not based on sales techniques, but on our unique contribution. And every single thing in our past was part of that contribution. And so I remember the very first year working with Suzanne, we were in Chicago. We came together for a weekend to celebrate and summarize a year of working together of growth as chairs, as building our practices. And she had us do a walking meditation in which our present was here, our past was 3 feet behind us, and our future was 3 feet in the front. And there were 12 chairs in the room, and I thought, I'm not going into my past. Like that instruction that I gave to myself at the end of the war, I physically will not do it. I am not going anywhere near my past. And I thought, she'll never notice me. There's like 12 other people in the room. I'm just not doing this. And so I'm standing there like pretty smug and pleased with myself and happy. And all of a sudden I hear, Gadi, oh man, it's like nailed. I thought nobody would see me. And I was expecting her to make me do it. And the next thing that she did just kind of threw me for a loop. She said, if you don't want to do it, you don't have to do it. And that was from that space of do what you're ready to do. When you're ready to do, you have free choice. Nobody's coercing you. Allows our true essence to come up.
Yeah. You said something that I know that for you and I, even within all of our talks we've had in the past, the one thing that I think that people sometimes struggle with is understanding and accepting that with authenticity and transparency, vulnerability, there's great power.
Absolutely.
That weakness.
Yes.
Why are people so afraid? And even our previous generations, it was like frowned upon.
Yes.
And again, I shared, even though my statement comes from areas of, from a personal perspective of how we view, communicate, receive, but what I don't think people realize is that all of that impacts the way we manage, impacts the way we coach, we teach, we lead.
Yes. Yes. So, great question. And what you said earlier about what happens in childhood, typically between the ages of 4 to 8, is when our brain gets shaped. All the developmental steps that have to happen for us to grow happen. And pretty much by the age of 8, we're just replaying our life. We've adopted certain beliefs about, in order to get my parents to love me or care for me or provide for me, then I need to do or be this. And we replay that. And sometimes Gabor Mate, great trauma teacher and physician, talks about the child has a choice between abandoning themselves, their true nature, or attachment to their parent who makes sure that, who is survival, right? For a child to be without a parent means I'm going to die. So our brain's job is not necessarily to think. Our brain's number one job is to survive. So anything that our brain perceives as survival has number one priority. So anything we learn that we think, I have to be this way to survive because my parents will approve of this and disapprove of that, then becomes our number one priority, which is the cause of self-limiting beliefs or self-destructive behavior later on. It's not self-destructive. It's that old pattern that we learned. So it's discovering the roots of those core beliefs that may not be affecting us. So primarily when there's two paths in life, fundamentally, love or fear. When a parent is healthy and fully connected to themselves and can fully be themselves, that is, they love themselves, they know themselves, they understand that. Where do they learn that? They learn that from their parents reflecting back to them. When parents are detached or distracted or traumatized or not available or pressured or worried or anxious, sometimes as parents, we don't see our children. And when our children are not seen, they don't learn who they are.
Yeah.
And then they operate out of fear. But when the child is seen and loved and adored and treasured because of your beautiful blue eyes, of your sense of humor, of how I just love being with you, then they're put on the path of love.
Yeah.
And so and so many people start out on the path of fear, and then that permeates every aspect of their life.
Especially in the workplace, and if they become and they take that leap of entrepreneurship and ends up being their limitation, I would say, is a word.
Yes.
Right? Yeah, totally get that. So I also want to talk a little bit about music.
Oh.
Because I read that you actually, outside of being an accomplished author, you are also have a background in music, and your family had a background in music. Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, primarily it was liturgical Jewish ritual music that affected me deeply growing up, and so the war of which I spoke, 1973 Yom Kippur War, actually broke out on the holiest day of the Jewish year, in which the deepest liturgical music and very moving spiritual prayers that really touched the soul happened. So that combination of those haunting themes, and are all around the themes of who shall live and who shall die, and God's forgiveness and love and redemption, and going above, and that perhaps we have not merited through our actions to be inscribed for a year of life. So we throw ourselves on God's mercy through our tears. And those themes of the haunting liturgical music, I would say the war was actually those services in three dimensions. It was the sounds. And so every year when I would hear that music and the songs and the singing and the prayers, I relived the war.
Yeah.
Who shall live and who shall die? It wasn't words on a page. It was three dimensions.
I think that for me, it's always been music has been such a powerful element on on our mood, our state of mind. So Vivek, there's a, it was showed to me years ago about how music is an access point to a stamp of a moment in time that you were able to connect with. It's like the song that I fell in love with, or with my wife, or the song that reminded me of my mom and dad when I was at the park, or whatever the case of,
Right.
and or the opposite, right? And so, do you find that within entrepreneurship, and or even just that people connect with it even more nowadays?
Very much so. It's very important. Like when COVID broke out, so I could see that everything became more difficult, right? Should I go to the supermarket? Might be a life and death question. Should I visit my mom and dad? That's a life and death question. So I could see that the stress was going up. And as humans, the way we release stress is through loving and safe connection with others. And that was being lost. So the stress was going up. The isolation was increasing or taking away people's capability to recover from the stress. So it was a perfect recipe for mental distress, which in fact is what happened. What I worked with my clients was be intentional and take time, discover and do the things that give you joy and happiness. Whether it's a walk, whether it's meditation, whether it's music. And music, the songs that you enjoy that give you happiness, listen to them more. Listen to them systematically. Reconnect with them.
Yeah, for sure.
Very, very powerful.
So in your, you left the war. Where was your first career?
I did a lot of things. So I looked at my career, and I was I started in Israel. I worked in the jewelry business.
Okay.
Actually, I started in the bank. I worked in the bank. I worked in the back office. I worked in the front office. Then I was, at age 28, I was sales manager of a wholesale jewelry manufacturing company. It was a jewelry manufacturing company. We sold to wholesalers. I moved to the United States. Then I went from banking, front office, back office, to manufacturing, to sales. Then I worked for wholesalers here. Then in the jewelry business. Then I had my own jewelry wholesaling company. And then I went to the insurance business. So in hindsight, I look back that I was just very curious, very empathic. I want to understand life and business through everybody's different perspective. And when I had discovered that and completed that journey is when I started my leadership mentoring.
Did you find that each one of these experiences you still use today?
Absolutely. In talking to clients, and the more relaxed, the more connected I am with myself, the more stories and thoughts come up that in hindsight I can see that every single thing I've ever experienced now contributes to helping leaders find their greatness.
Yeah. What was the motivation to get up and come to the U.S.?
I was unhappy in Israel with the culture. I now know that it was my own trauma. I was too agitated. I was looking for calm, and the Middle East is a very high octane place with a lot of people talking in very high tones and things happening very quickly. And I was not happy there.
Got it. And then so you got into the insurance. Now, were you in the financial service side, or what area of insurance were you in?
I was life insurance side of the business, and life insurance, health insurance, investments.
And then so from there, then so you mentioned earlier that Visage came across because they either sought you out, and also you had some friends that guided you and come to that conclusion. What has been in that process of guiding mating leaders, what's been the most rewarding thing that you've got from doing so?
Oh, it's the rewards happen every day. I think the most rewarding thing is almost every session where I'm talking to leaders who have some level of stress, something they're concerned about, something they're trying to fix. something that they might not know how to fix, something that they might even be hopeless, and there might be so much of it that might be overwhelmed, is we calm everything down. And I let people talk. Like, I listen, and listening says, I believe in you. And I don't have an agenda, because I believe that they have an inner knowing of what they need to do. And my job is to help them find that, not tell them what it is.
So how do you get an individual who is, by nature, society says it's not okay to ask for help, or it's not the thing to do, going through a tough time because people want to show well,
Right.
getting them to be able to say, Gadi, I need help.
So I'll go to some of my research on trauma. And something I studied was called the polyvagal theory by Dr. Stephen Porges, which has become the foundation of understanding the nervous system and thereby how to calm himself. So what Dr. Porges says is there's something called the vagal, V-A-G-A-L, break. And oftentimes that happens when a person, let's say you're going into a meeting, and let's say you're anticipating, this is going to be a tough meeting, right? I'm going to have to deliver or receive some unpleasant news. And then, like, all of a sudden, things are going way better than you ever thought. And what happens is your heart rate drops by about 20 to 30 beats a minute. I can see from your face that, like, you've experienced that.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
100%.
That, and all of a sudden, what has actually happened is we've shifted from fight or flight. Like, I'm geared up for that, that tough battle. Yeah. And all of a sudden, I love the guy I'm talking to. Yeah. Everything is well. And what's happened is, in the shift out of fight or flight back into connection, we've generated the feel-good chemicals, the chemicals that we feel when connecting, oxytocin, when we touch or hug, oxytocin, serotonin, GABA, that actually change. We move out of the high adrenaline, where the high heart rate, where our heart's moving faster, generating blood to our hands for fight, or our feet for flight, and we have a very narrow focus, and we don't see anything, and we see the world as a target, and we're prepared to respond very fast, which is what's necessary when there's a genuine threat. When we're in stress, we often mistake somebody who's trying to connect with us for a threat, and that's what trauma is. So when that happens, and I was coaching a CEO who had almost given up. He had come out of a horrific situation. He was really hopeless. And I was coaching a CFO, and he said, like, do you think Gadi can help me? He said, well, let's give it a shot. So he was describing his life, a lot of pain, a lot of addiction. And I told him, you don't have an addiction problem, you have a pain problem. And I described the vagal break. And at that moment, he looked at his Fitbit and he said, you're right. My heart rate's normally like 98. It's like 78. And like that moment when all of a sudden people feel heard, and we drop the beliefs. I've got to be tough. I've got to have a mask. I can't give in. If I say something, that it will be used against me. And your body is telling you through the feelings of warmth and connection. It's the same feelings that happen when we're at a ball game. And all of a sudden, our team scores a touchdown and we're high-fiving people we don't even know. And we love them. Why do we love them? It's those chemicals of connection, because we're rooting for the same team.
We as humans are meaning-making machines on everything. Even in this conversations, right? You put meanings into, like, what I hear, what I see, or whatnot, right? And I think that one of the things that I've been taught, and that I'm always in positions of forced to be remembered, and you're bringing this up, is that when we take the meanings aside, or we put them aside, they will never escape. They'll always be present with us. But when we put them aside and we just deal with the facts, it will always change the perspective. Yes. And we will ask different questions, which gives us different results.
Absolutely.
And even in this gentleman that you're assisting with, there's always it always comes back down to, how am I feeling? And then what meaning do I put to that feeling?
Right.
Which can be, depending on the person, a rabbit hole, right? So, this conversation is making me feel like, there's a word, feeling. Like, if we really took the time to not be afraid of our past as an entrepreneur, and to look at the beautiful things, the not so good things, and maybe even the really bad things, it would probably get us much closer to knowing where those barriers are, where the bottlenecks or those issues are. And then being able to find someone like you who has mastered and designed a process to helping people overcome them. What do people need to know? What do people need to do?
Couple things. The first thing, and Dr. Porteous says this in his polyvagal theory, has become fundamental, because sometimes I'll have this conversation with people and they're in distress, and I will make a deceptively simple comment, and then they'll start, oh, why didn't I think about that? So the reason that people don't think about it on their own is because health, growth, and restoration takes place when we're in a state of connection.
Say that one more. I'm sorry. Say that one more time.
Health, growth, and restoration, whether it's the health of your company or yourself, whether it's the growth of yourself or your company, and restoring your body to a state of equilibrium after you've been stressed out, takes place when we are in a state of connection, when we feel safe, when we're connected to ourselves, which means we're vulnerable, we're open, and we're connected to another human being.
Can that happen like this? Is that possible? Or does it take a process that could take days or hours?
It generally happens in every session I have. You're probably experiencing it right now. It's through that, because of my high empathy and my high sensitivity and my genuine desire to help and alleviate suffering and understand and see, people feel seen and heard, and they know that they're worthy. And that means they can relax, their heartbeat can go down.
Which is one of the identities. Am I worthy or good enough? And so being empathetic, sympathetic, watching them being, or not actually watching them, actually being there present for them, gives them that safe, comfortable space, which opens up vulnerability, transparency, and so on.
Now, I want to tell you more about myself.
That's right. That's right. So there's a saying that I have within one of our communities. It's not about me. It's about the person speaking. And that speaks into what you just said, speaks into that, because I think that people sometimes forget that as something in today's world, if I post something on social media, or if I send an email, or I do a newsletter, I took time for this. I thought about it. I wanted to be impactful for whoever was going to read it. People don't think of it that way. They're like, oh, it's a newsletter, or it's a post. It has nothing to do with it. Versus understanding that it's not about you.
That's right.
It's about the person who is in your life, and you said that was important to you.
Right.
Honor him or her.
Absolutely.
And that's not a habit that I don't see easily brought out.
Yes. I think what happens is that when people start on the path of fear, or they get infected by fear, and they don't have those safe connections and those safe places, whether it's family, friends, business groups, coaching, therapy, whatever it is, whatever place you need where you can be yourself, which means I love myself. So one of my principles I've learned is physiology drives cognition. The state of your body determines your thoughts. So if I'm sleepy, what do I think about? how I get to bed, if I'm hungry, if I'm thirsty, if I'm irritated. If I want to change my thoughts, I change the state of my physiology. When I go from a state of agitation, upset, irritation to calm, happiness, contentment, my thoughts change. And therefore, my physiology, since I'm connected with myself and loving myself, the calm is evidence that I'm at peace with myself and I'm happy with myself. And the state of connection with myself is very high. That physiology of connection, I then talk with other people from that place, and their interpretation is, oh, Gadi seems very happy and very connected. We're talking. He must be happy and connected to me. Right? And I must feel good. Conversely, when I'm irritated and upset about something else, nothing having to do with that people, but I'm carrying that in my nervous system, their nervous system picks up that irritation or frustration or upset and says, Gadi's upset or irritated. He must be upset and irritated with me. And so I will respond from a place of fight or flight rather than connection.
You've come back to that a couple of times, the fight or flight. And I think that it's present for everybody, of course. It's no different than like making a decision to open up a company or a business for whatever reason. Massive impact equals massive change, right? The more change. The areas of inspiration, or I had this idea, I have this concept, is one thing. Testing it and it works. What, in your experience, makes the difference between a company going and growing gradually versus a company that does this?
And I can talk from my own experience and experience with my clients is the quality of that connection with self at the root. Meaning the more authentic I am, the more genuine I am, the more people, their nervous system picks up. This guy's really about helping me, not about, this is not a newsletter, this is not a technique, this is not something to rope me in, because we're all attuned to that. We all expect that, we all have our barriers up. Authenticity is rare. When our nervous system detects it, we feel it and we gravitate to it.
Yeah. Do you find that that authenticity and vulnerability is more welcoming in today's world, in today's society versus the last 20 years?
Well, I think today's society, everything's speeding up.
Yeah.
Everything's going faster. Everybody expects everything 24/7. We expect it instantaneously. We want it now. If we don't, it's really easy to get frustrated.
Right.
Managing ourselves, managing our state, using technology to help express our authenticity, not to speed up our inauthenticity, I think is the key.
Oh, very much so. So, in the business owners and the entrepreneurs that you've worked with, the leaders, what are you seeing, at least today, or at least within the last couple of years, what have you seen as being the one issue that just seems to kind of spew into different industries or people that keep showing up?
Overwhelm. I would say this technology, this increase in expectations has caused an overwhelm in leadership. Like the day never ends. As much as I do, it's never enough. I'm never finished. There's always more.
So when is it enough?
When we're at
Your therapy session right now.
And that's the connection to ourselves. That's knowing who we are, what our gifts are. My gift is to be empathic. I actively suppress that for most of my life.
So okay, I have my wife in my head right now, because she'll say, how do you love yourself? Like, how does someone understand that to be their best version of the self is to love their already perfect, imperfect self? How do you do that?
Well, it didn't happen easily for me. There's almost nobody I know who is really driven, CEO who it happens easily for, because we drive ourselves. We want more. We achieve this. We want more than that. We're not fulfilled. It's not good enough. The most important factor is really support, is really having a place, a safe place, as I said, whether it's a friend, whether it's a coach, whether it's a therapist, a community, a peer group, a church, a synagogue, any place where you can genuinely be authentic with people who get you and see you and value you and have no agenda other than, I want what's best for you.
Totally get that. So what are you up to now? Because this is, you retired from Distant.
Right.
You did that for, what, 13?
16 years.
16 years.
Yeah.
You've impacted hundreds of people.
Yes.
And I know you're loved within the community because like people talk about you outside. By the way, our mutual friend, Clay Spitz says hi.
Oh.
We interviewed him just last month.
Clay's a great guy. Yeah.
I was beautiful. What now?
So everything is like, my business is like speeding up, and clients who met monthly, now they're asking to meet weekly. And so I guard my time. I guard my time between meetings so I can maintain my calm and connection with myself, and always checking in, like, how am I feeling, what's doing, what's working on. I still have my own coach. I have good friends. I have a relationship. That place of, life is wonderful, where I can see the impact. When I talk about the journey to people, I talk about the analogy of the propeller on a plane. Like, if you're outside the plane, you're trying to push the propeller. At the beginning, it's so heavy. It's so hard. I tell people, don't look at quantity, just look at the direction. Are you going in the direction you want to go in? It doesn't matter. If it's an inch a day, it doesn't matter. You're going, the more I do the work, the propeller speeds up, and it speeds up. And people went from having ahas and breakthroughs once a month, once a quarter, and thinking that was fantastic, to every single meeting. And the same for me. So the fulfillment, and now people, I had my latest client that I brought on board very young, like 26 years old. He owns 50 properties. And so he actually said, and we were meeting for 2 hours once a week. He said, let's go twice a week. Let's go twice a week. So it's that sense of enthusiasm and excitement and authentic, genuine energy. Because when we're in fight or flight, the energy we get is adrenaline and there's a collapse. But when we connect with ourselves, with our true nature, with all great leaders have 5 core leadership powers. It's different for everybody. When we connect with our powers, and our powers are in balance and harmony, and they're all spinning together in equilibrium and balance, it's a joy, and great things get done.
There's so much there. I'm going to break it down from me to, I think, for the benefit of the audience, that you said. The 5 superpowers that each person has. I agree. Everybody has their own, right? And there's their strengths, and then there's the weakness, but it's still there, right? And you said something about balance with respects to balance, right? I think life in general kind of is like that pendulum where it'll force you to adjust and how you adjust. But the one thing that I heard, at least beneath the words you stated, was, because as long as you're present to what's present, everything else will work itself out.
Absolutely.
Because that's at times where people end up making mistakes of like thinking about what's not working, what's there, whatever. You see, I'll give you a perfect example. Like this weekend, I was out at the ranch, and I was telling Max here behind the camera. I said, on my way here back home from Rock Springs, Texas, which is where our land is at, I had 6 flat tires from the moment I left to the time I got to my house. I didn't think I was ever going to get home. And I kept telling myself, don't think about a flat tire. Don't think about a flat tire. And what happened is that, what truth is that to, granted, that's just maybe a little bit of bad luck.
No, here's the way the brain works. The brain does not recognize a negative. So if I tell you, Jason, don't think about pink elephants now, what are you thinking about?
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's that focus on the positive. Because when we focus, whatever we focus on expands. If we focus on the negative, we're increasing our fear. We're actually tightening ourselves up, restraining ourselves, generating more adrenaline so we might feel good, but we're coming from a place of fear, and whatever the fear expands.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's like driving at night and watching the lights or the sirens of the police, and you just find yourself kind of leaning towards it, if you will, because that's where you're focusing.
That's right.
Stay on the road.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the other part that you mentioned was the area of being. It was around the perspective of focusing on the presence, because you said entrepreneurs, or at least a lot of them, are like, all right, did it. What's next? But they never really get to appreciate what they just accomplished. How do you get them to realize that? Because I will tell you, in my journey, it wasn't until I turned 45, 46 where I realized, okay, slow down. Enjoy the roses. Enjoy what's been accomplished.
Right.
And even I found myself, in my mid 40s, and I said, and I don't think I've accomplished enough or did enough. And then I'd had some friends tell me, "B, what are you talking about?" And they would name whatever. Why are we always going through that?
Fear that we're not good enough.
Well, that's for sure me.
Well, that's what's so. You're a perfect example. I've accomplished A, B, C, D. All my friends are in awe, right? And they see objective things that perhaps they haven't or they dream of. And yet that internal part, those parts of us that know that we could achieve more, that we're not fully fulfilled, keep driving us, and then we ignore that. So it's what I call whipping ourselves with a wet noodle. Right? We've learned over time that when we do that, and when we internalize that voice of somebody else and say, you haven't cleaned your room, you haven't done this, you haven't taken out the trash, you haven't, what do we get? We get fear. When we get fear, what do? We get adrenaline, we get power. Then we take that outer voice that used to say, you haven't, and we take it inside us because we like the adrenaline. We don't get the fulfillment, though. We never get the fulfillment from a place of fear.
So fear as the one, what is it? The breakdown is false evidence appearing real, right? So which the opposite of that would be is with complete clarity and with detail, you are then empowered in eliminating or mitigating fear. So
more than that. Not just mitigating fear, it's shifting out of fear into a place of love. Like when you're looking at your child and have just nothing but the child and how adorable and how wonderful and a parent's love, and is there any fear at all?
No, it just is.
Because it just is. It's just pure love.
Yeah.
That's what I'm talking about.
Reminded me of one of my mentors. He would always, she would say, chocolate or vanilla, choose. And I'd start. I said vanilla, and she's like, why? And I would go into reasons like, I don't know, I just love the taste of it. I'm just a big vanilla. I was like, no, you're wrong. It's like chocolate, vanilla, choose. And you would throw it. She goes, because I like it. It just is.
Exactly.
All the backstory and all the everything else is irrelevant.
It's right. It's irrelevant to the experience and the sensory perception and the joy of tasting that vanilla.
Yeah.
Our brain, we're not thinking rational. The rational comes afterwards when she says why. And having the courage to say just because means I'm good enough. I don't have to explain to you.
And it's so true. And it's so true. Because it gives you, and going back to the perspective of how do we get people to love themselves and to say that, like, my creation, whether it be a product or service that they're selling, is good enough and worthy enough. How do we get them there? What's up? Where do they start? I guess we may not have the answer to everybody because it may be different for everybody, but where do we start with someone like that?
The same way that in the heart of that battle, when we were giving up on ourselves, Unknown saw us as being capable and spoke to us from that place and saw us that place. And the calm in his voice testified to the authenticity of his belief in us. And that belief in us transferred to ourselves.
Yeah. Because one of the things in our community that I have seen pop up a lot is in this last, I would say, month and a half or so, I have been introduced and or have met a lot of individuals that are probably in their mid-years and they've left their career to start entrepreneurship. They're experts in, you name it, human consulting to change management to technology, whatever it is. But something triggered them to create a world of entrepreneurship and start their own venture. What's interesting, what I have found interesting is that they have the same issues that someone who's probably a couple years in advance or ahead of them, they had the same fears. They don't see themselves as, I can do it, or I don't know what to do, or I'm just still starting to figure it out. What would you tell someone who is starting a new career and thinking about whether they should take the leap or not?
I would say something that you referred to earlier, which is about celebrating your achievements. We get confidence not because I tell you you're a great guy, Jason. It's when Jason looks at Jason and says, I was here, now I'm here. I did that. This is what I'm capable of. The importance of celebrating is now I know that I'm here. When I don't celebrate, I'm still working from that place, that old place of fear. And as much as I achieve, I'm never happy. When I celebrate, I'm rewiring my nervous system to say, this is who I am, this is my capabilities. And find people to support you and believe in you and have been on that journey, maybe a little bit ahead of you, and genuinely care about you.
What would be something that you would want people to know about you and yet not talked about enough?
I think, so there's two parts of me. A part of me that help people overcome their fear. And since as human beings, we're wired to operate like the fear of loss is greater than the possibility of gain. Like if we think about what we could earn on a venture or a purchase and what we could gain, what we could lose, the fear of loss always plays a greater role. So I work with people on two elements. And my system is very simple. It's calm, connect, activate. When people calm down, the fear goes away. And so people think, oh, Gadi's like a therapist. He's great. I feel great when I talk to him. But then they put me into the therapist bucket. Oh, he's like a therapist. Yeah. No, that's just part of it. That's just, now let's build. Now let's act from your place of connection or opportunism, that you can see opportunity, that you can see places in the marketplace, that there's a gap and I can fill this.
Yeah, because being able to identify the root reason and the cause, there's a process in that. Mm-hmm. But you're right. Just because you identify it doesn't mean it's fixed.
That's right.
And it doesn't mean things will change.
And it doesn't mean you're the person to do it. And it doesn't mean you won't make mistakes or lose or let fear drive you.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. And so what's next for you?
Well,
Your journey of where you're at.
Well, I've been working one-on-one very intensively, and that's gone intensively. And I recognize that my clients as much as I give them, they need more. So I've introduced my clients to other clients, and they've hit it off with some of them. So really the next step is putting together a group of my clients that are familiar with my journey, their 5 core leadership powers, learning how to calm their nervous system, how to let go of the adrenaline and achieve even more by connecting with their native, authentic gifts and powers, the 5 of them, so they're all in harmony, because nobody I know talks that way or thinks that way, so they forget it. So empowering them and then building a greater community around that.
Yeah. We are all not bound to be here forever. When that day comes, what do you want people to remember you by?
He cared about me. And he knew how to help me.
Yeah. I have to ask a question. It's not something I'm not asked before, but is there something that I haven't asked you that you would want me to ask?
Not really. Whatever you ask is fine. It's your journey, and my job is to be present to you. And is there anything you're still curious about?
Well, I could tell you this is the fact, like, there's so much with your story, and we've gone through the evolutions of. We touched a little bit about the early years. Obviously, a big portion of who you became and how you got to was obviously the war that was very impactful. This gentleman, who really defined how your path really of like, here's what I'm going to be searching for. This is what I'm going to be. This is the question I need to know is, how was he so calm? Because even through this whole conversation that you and I have had, there's been elements that I personally am depicting it back to that one question. How did he get to be so calm?
So I spent over 10 years talking to him intermittently. I read his biography, and the first chapter in his biography is, I lived an enchanted childhood.
What's his name?
Amnon Eshkol. He passed away 2 years ago.
And what's his book name?
Amnon, Amnon.
Okay, got it. And because I think there is something there to be discovered. For me, the search per journey for understanding calmness will give you peace. And then from that peace, I think it will also create. A painter doesn't paint with an already existing canvas. It paints it from a blank canvas. And I think what I'm hearing from you is your path and journey and what you've done for other people is coming from a perspective of being able to get them to start from a blank canvas.
More accurately, I would say, see, when I started my first Vistage group, I had this strong pull. I have to go see Amnon. It was just intense. And I went to see him. In my mind, logically, I was saying, I have to thank him. I have to tell him that what he taught me on the battlefield, I'm actually teaching other people like 35 years later. Yeah. And he looked at me, and what he said changed my life. He said, you're empathic. Lead people that way. And in a nutshell, that coming to peace with ourselves and shifting from, I'm ashamed and embarrassed of my sensitivity, and I'm in conflict with it, to I fully accept it and embrace it, that's what brought the inner peace.
Yeah, totally get that. Thank you for today.
Thank you, Jason. I appreciate the opportunity and the genuine questioning and sincerity, and I hope this is, what's the best thing you're taking away from this conversation?
Peace. I can tell you that for me, it's no different than any conversation I've ever had with you. And I employ everyone who's watching this to take a time and look up Gadi, because your ability to actually be sincerely present to who's in front of you, it really resonates. And with that, I think it will, at least for me, even in this discussion, is being able to give me some insights and or reminders of, okay, where am I not in a place of comfort? Actually, here's a question. So everything starts from somewhere, and then you end up there. This could be the start of entrepreneurship to where whatever you define success to be. And yes, I agree. Some entrepreneurs or most entrepreneurs are like, okay, what's next after that? Rather being accept. But the one thing that I have learned, or I believe personally, is that I want to be a master at the in-between and the uncomfortableness. Being willing to be comfortable of being uncomfortable. Because for me, I have found that taking a place of fear and changing it as a state of mind, a word of opportunity, changes the way that I react. And that's not easy. It's really hard. And it's one of those things that I not only have to post it, I have to write it, I have to think about it, but I actually have to practice it so that it could be a muscle. Mm-hmm. So, because at the end of the day, when someone says, oh, you did this or you accomplished this, whoever that may be, they forget, they just want it like this. I started and I'm there, but they forget that journey in between could be a day or 10 years. Mm-hmm. How do you get people, and would you advise people to master or be comfortable with being uncomfortable?
Themselves. Somebody once defined the entertainment industry as anything other than me. I don't want to be myself. I don't want to be with myself. Yeah. I can't tolerate myself. And so I jump into other distractions, activities, relationships, pursuits to take me away from myself. So in my case, the thing that made me most uncomfortable was myself. Yeah. And it took me years, and it took layers and layers of acceptance and understanding and self-respect and self-love and self-worthiness. And it's a journey that continues. And the more and deeper we get comfortable with ourselves, the more every other discomfort becomes secondary, and we can master it more easily because we've mastered the most difficult thing, which is the comfort with ourselves.
Yeah. Accepting who we are.
Right.
Yeah. I am perfect within my imperfect self. Yeah. So, I have a question here. So here is within the mentors, your coaches, or the people that you still have in your lives that are guiding you and in some cases maybe being a mirror or a reflection or just keeping you aware of something, is there a tool or a process or something that you find very simple but yet impactful that people can use in their own journey?
Yes, it's and it actually comes out of the Bible with the prophet Elijah, and he's in despair and he wishes to die, and God sends him to Mount Sinai, and he brings storms and fire and noise and earthquakes, and God is not there, and there's an inner stillness. In Hebrew, it's called Mamadaka, and that finding that inner stillness that all of us have, that little piece of God within that connects us to so much beyond us. We all have it. The more we access it, the more powerful, satisfied, and complete we'll be.
Yeah. Well received, for sure. I'm going to ask you a couple questions.
Sure.
The rapid fire question.
Sure.
So who is Gadi?
Gadi's an empath who loves people and wants to alleviate the suffering of leaders who doubt themselves.
And what does Gadi do today?
I take care of myself so I can take care of others, and they can take care of themselves.
And how do you do that for others?
I have a practice every day, just somatic exercises that I do that connect me with myself, that I've gathered over the decades, that calm my nervous system.
It's a ritual?
Yes.
Okay. Do you do that typically in the morning?
Yes.
Okay, got it. So assume that we're tomorrow's 12 months in advance in the future. Okay. And it's here. What are some of the things that you've accomplished in the next 12 months?
I've written my book about great leadership. My first CEO group of leaders who understand their 5 core leadership powers and come from a place of love and empathy, transparency, authenticity, and vulnerability. The genuine power of that is up and running. And they're supporting each other and doing unbelievable things.
I totally get that. 2, I would love to have you speak to our community, read the book. I'd keep you open to that one day when you get it completed.
Happy to.
Oh, thank you, sir, very much for your time.
Thank you, Jason. Appreciate it.